It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160 is Indiana Junior High Principal Michael Minnick with us. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Busy day at the junior high today, huh? You got some standardized testing going on.
That is a fact. Good morning to you, Mr. Marino. We are kicking off the PSSA season today at the junior high school.
You know, there were a lot of school administrators and others that I talked to that said, you know what, I wish we didn't have to do this year, but you are required to do them, and so you make the best of it, don't you?
We certainly do. While I think it's not completely an informed picture if you just take PSSAs as a standalone measure of what we're doing well and where we need to get better, I do feel like the uniformity of the test and gives us something to compare against other schools. Comparing against others it can be a dangerous precedent because I think just like people, every individual school has a unique personality, unique circumstances to the operations that they run. We at the junior high, we know that we have wonderful community support that values education. We have great kids. We really do have great kids. We have an outstanding teaching staff here, and if anything can be weaned from this test, it's I think important to stop and audit where we are right now with student learning as measured by PSSA, and use them to compare with our own grading and our own locally controlled assessments to get a full picture of where our kids are, especially at this unprecedented time in their own, well, in any of our lives. I mean, who's ever been through anything like this past 14 months? So there is immense value in administering these tests. I just don't put everything that we do into one basket. I think that's a dangerous precedent, but the value we get from PSSA is immense.
Yeah, and the analytics are probably going to look a lot different, and it'll be really interesting to compare, as you said, to other schools and what they have done. And I think one of the greatest measures is going to be, okay, what is the percentage of change that you perceive out of your numbers as opposed to another school district and the percent of change out of theirs? And how are the kids doing in those? There are so many things that you can add into the formula that it'll take a while to weed through all of that stuff. But meanwhile, you've got the rest of the school year to get through, just a few weeks left.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the days are long, but the weeks absolutely fly by. I can't believe we're standing here on May 11th. It's the strangest contradiction, because it seems like late August, when teachers started coming back in to kick off the school year, that seems like a lifetime ago, right? Mm-hmm. But yet it was the beginning of this same school year where we started off, and yet the year has flown by. It's just incredible, the paradigm of both long days but weeks that just fly at seem like a breakneck pace. But it does. I think that is one of the characteristics of the work that we do. We pour ourselves into these jobs, and it is so calendar driven with all of the programming, whether it be testing or just typical school programming. We pour ourselves into this work. It is more than a job. It is like a life's work to serve our students and their families, and emotionally, it's challenging. We pour ourselves into it, and that's, I think, why it flies, because it is so calendar driven, and there's always the next thing coming down the pike that we're planning for. So it's wild that we're already in mid-May. But we are, and we're strategizing for the summer and setting the table for the fall, and hopefully we'll have getting back to business the way we love most, and that's having kids in the school with some normalcy. That would be great.
We look for mileposts in our lives every year. At a certain point of the year, you need to have this accomplished or that achieved. and then we compare that to where we might have been in a previous year. And what our hopes will be for the coming year. Are the mileposts, when you get to each of those mileposts of each year, whether it be a grading period or the beginning of a new month, are you where you need to be in terms of the students' educational accomplishments and what you expect out of them?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes and no. And I'm not playing a political game. I'm going to give you a full answer on. We use the word benchmarks when I survey my teachers to see how we're doing in terms of getting through the scope and sequence of their planned courses, the approved course of instruction in each of our departments. Our teachers will say that we're pretty close to where we normally would be in terms of getting through the scope and sequence. So in that regard, yes. Where we are in student learning is another matter. We have various platforms, from kids who are face-to-face in the school 4 out of 5 days, which, as you know, we didn't start there. Mm-hmm. We started off with more of a hybrid model, 2 on and 3 off. We have kids that are full-time synchronous, so they're logging in synchronously to their Google Classrooms from home. I don't know about you, but I, for one, would have a hard time operating in that model. When I participate virtually in meetings, I'm not enrolled in any coursework right now, but when I participate in meetings, I do much better when I'm in my workplace, my physical space, that I think psychologically gives me, like, it checks into, this is my workspace, and I create a workspace at home too, but it's still not the same as my workspace here. So yeah. I think something is lost. Even though our teachers are doing a great job and our families are doing a great job to support kids being synchronous, I just don't think there's a substitute for that face-to-face, in-person learning environment. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the asynchronous, which we call our cyber school program, and that's even, I think, a little bit further removed from the face-to-face interaction that a traditional school setting really sets atop as far as our preference for teaching and learning. So I think that the different models have affected students' learning, and these tests will be an indicator, at least one indicator, of how well we're filling gaps from last spring through now. There's plenty of research that suggests that summertime creates a natural regression in many students, if not most students, where we have to start off the school year just sort of getting everybody primed back up to the process of day-to-day school life and getting reactivated. Some families are such strong proponents of education that they keep their kids on routines that involve reading and writing and exploration and more of an educational sort of mindset throughout the summer, where others are more just be free to be kids and take a break and hang out at the pool, and that's great too. But the reality is there is a summer regression that we always have to encounter and plan for, and these tests will give us a little bit of insight as to how significant that gap is following the pandemic that we've been navigating for the past 15 months or so.
I would guess as well that some courses are much more that case. I'm thinking of math courses which build upon knowledge already gained. If you are lagging behind in this particular discipline in math and you move on to the one that builds upon your expertise in that first discipline, then you're going to have difficulty stage-wise as it progresses, and it's going to get worse and worse. So you really need to be on top of the game there right from the start when you're dealing with math courses.
Well, you're so correct in that while I would be the last person that tries to create a pecking order in terms of importance of any one of our departments over the other, it's hard to argue that basic literacy, reading, writing, speaking, listening, and mathematics, and you put science in there too, it's hard to argue that without that foundational knowledge, it's hard to excel in any career field that a student decides to pursue. There has to be that foundational knowledge, something that we're, as educators, we're learning more and more about and building into our programming is the importance of social and emotional wellness, self-care, and how do we build that into our programming. You know, we have encore classes here, for example, that really are wonderful release points for the emotional, if not trauma, I would call it hardship that this past year has presented. All people, not just kids, but their families, their friends, their siblings. The emotional challenges that the past year have presented, I think, emphasize so many of the disciplines that we offer here as important components to the students, not only their learning and knowledge base, but their overall wellness. And while our core subjects are critical foundational pieces, the emotional wellness of all the people, that's an important part of my awareness as a building principal. I'm very much aware. I was just talking this morning in our announcements about the importance of core values and how important it is to state your core values. And it's challenging to live by your core values, but treating people well, treating people with kindness, leading with a loving heart, accepting all people as important, and supporting them through this journey, I think is really the essence of why most of us chose this work. And yet these times have been so challenging with just the tension and emotional, again, I don't know if it's trauma, but it's definitely hardship that everyone has tried to endure and overcome. And just challenging kids as well as our individual selves to rise above and be the best we can be loving, be light-filled. I think that's ultimately the greatest service we can do for students is to teach them how to lead that way, their own lives that way, and give them the tools to pursue whatever it is they want.
We're going to have to cut it short here this morning. Michael Minnick, thank you so much for being with us today.
I could just go on and on and on, can't I? It's a good thing I have you to check me when I need to be stopped. But I appreciate the opportunity as always. I wish you a great day, Mr. Marino.
And you as well. News is next. News is next.